Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, we have lakes all around us, and I say around us within an hour's drive or a half hour's drive, that do have lake trout in them. They're one of the natural species that was here in our region of New York before almost any other fish were here. Most of the fish are not native to this area, but brook trout and lake trout are. And they exist in for example, Trout Lake, Sylvia Lake. There's lakes around us. There's lakes down in the Indian River chain of lakes near Teresa that have lake trout. And a lot of people sort of dismiss them as not table fare. Now we're talking about something a little bit different than catch and release. But a lot of times when you catch lake trout, they aren't going to live. And I'll tell you why, because they're a deep water fish. And if you bring them up too quickly, it's just like we talk about fizzing bass. Well, lake trout, they suffer the bends and they can die. And their meat is different than a lot of the other trout. They're oilier. They're not thought to be that great of eating. Well, let me tell you, they can be. And let me tell you some of the things you can do if you ever catch trout. And you can do this with any fish. Any fish that we can catch can potentially be good to eat if we do the right things. And I was talking to my buddy Dave Swanson, who is on Cayuga Lake now, and he's fishing lake trout all the time. And they're eating them more and more often. He's finding new ways to do this. Well, here's 2 tips. Number 1, he heard, because lake trout, even though trout have what seems like smooth skin, they've got tiny little scales. And if you're going to cook them in certain ways, you might not want that skin. You don't want those little scales. So he started skinning the fish. And skinning the fish made a huge difference. Then there's another step. Once you skin them, there's a lateral line that goes down the side of those fish. There is in almost any fish that swims, but in some fish, it's really pronounced. Largemouth bass, you can see that lateral line on the outside skin, on their scales. You see that line going down the side, and that's how a lot of people recognize that this is a largemouth. You don't see that on a smallmouth. But anyway, if you skin any of these fish, the meat along the side of their body where that lateral line is going to be darker, and it contains most of the pollution, and it also contains most of those fishy smelling, tasting oils. So if you can take your knife and cut out that lateral line, cut out that dark section of the meat. So now you've got a skinned trout that has the lateral line removed. And then if you take it and for a day, put it in the fridge, let the meat get cold, firm, and soak it in milk. And I will promise you, you do these 3 things, then you take that fillet back out, or that whole fish back out that's been skinned and lateral line removed and soaked in milk, and you can cook it in almost any way, and it's going to taste delicious. One of the things Dave has been doing now is cutting it into pieces, rolling it and dipping it in eggs, and then putting cornmeal or batter on it and frying it. He says it's absolutely as good as perch. So it's a culinary tip that me not being a cook, but I'm passing on, that can make fish even a greater table fare. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.